You may have all been reincarnated, but are your abilities worthy of such a fate? Thank you to our final patrons Rebel 4765, Midnight Gem Lord, Sean, Alex, Ice Rose, and Demix LND. And another thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays and Rebel 4765. And another very big thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Idel Kami, and Joaquin. And another very big thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. Before I'm in this breakdown / ranking and discussion of the abilities of the reincarnated sorcerers of the Culling games, please don't leave your own ranking in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon below, somewhere as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, let's hop into the ranking. What's up, guys? I was Pencil here, and here we are to do a ranking of the reincarnated sorcerers from the Culling games and their abilities. Now, notably, I am going to cheat. I'm going to cheat massively here, and I'm only going to do 4. And the 4 I'm ranking specifically are Reggie, Uro, Ryu, and Kashimo. Because there are other reincarnated players in the Culling games, such as Sukuna and Yorozu, and also Hazanoki, and also Hattori Hanzo, or whatever his name was. There are a bunch of other reincarnated sorcerers that either A, I want to give their own full dedicated videos to, because I think they're interesting enough to talk in their own dedicated videos. Looking at you, Yorozu, looking at you, Hazanoki. Yeah, not Hazanoki, I'm lying. And there are just some, like, I don't want to talk about. Like, I don't want to talk about Hanzo's ability, like the claws, like whatever. Yeah, you know they're bottom tier. So I'm gonna rank those 4. They were all relatively major antagonists of their respective arcs, and Higuruma, he doesn't count. I'll do a full ranking of the Culling games players in general soon enough, but I do mainly want to focus on the abilities. And notably, when I say abilities, you hear me not say curse techniques like I did with the special grade ranking video, mainly because we don't know Kashimo's curse technique. Like that's it. I would literally call this curse techniques, but I have to call it curse jujutsu abilities or whatever I end up calling it, because gosh, it wasn't just technique. So we're going to be specifically going off of what we have now. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Enemy, ready? 3, 2, 1. So, yeah. You know what time it is. I'm going to have to put Reggie's contractual recreation at the bottom. And here's the thing, right? It is actually like a really cracked technique when you start to think about it. Like, think about it for a bit too long and you start to realize like the infinite abilities and applications of this insane ability. Like you can really get to thinking and really be like, whoa, you could do some serious damage. You could do some real numbers with this. And that's very true. But I think it suffers from a lack of a couple things. Well, but before we get into what it's lacking, let me talk about praising it. Number 1, the diversity of the ability is to not be understated. The ability to randomly summon knives, the ability to not throw your feet around at people, the ability to summon something as big as a house, summon cars, like the ability to just spawn those in is super duper crazy. It's super duper viable, super duper valid, and honestly one of the most broken abilities in terms of like simply spawning. Like, creation users could never spawn this much mass. It's very impressive that Reggie is able to do that. Another thing that's super impressive about the technique, the pseudo Shikigami effect, where you can kind of control what the cars do or where they come from. Not just the cars, but any of the creations, what they do and where they come from. You can give them a command and they will follow that. Super duper impressive. That's how you get flying knives. That's how you get rising cars. That's how you get all that good stuff. That real good stuff, you do that through the application of contractual recreations ability. But a big thing that really makes contractual recreation lacking is, 1, you need the contract. Like, the reason that I think it's allowed to use up and create mass so easily in comparison to something like creation is the fact that you have that prerequisite. If you catch a contractual recreation user lacking and like they don't have their contracts on them, I guess they lost. They literally can't use their techniques. If you caught them fresh out the shower, there's no defending themselves if they don't have their techniques on them, and that's unfortunate. That's a major weakness that can be exploited. Another major weakness: if it's raining outside, I guess you don't want to be a contractual recreation user, because guess what? Now your whole parade is literally rained on because you literally can't do anything. Like, you just straight up lose. Which is so wild to think about, but it's true. You would legit just lose because your contracts would get destroyed. Water absolutely annihilates a contract user. Heck, realistically, any damage to the receipts nullifies a contract user. Number three, you need to identify the contract. Like, notably, presumably just based on how Reggie uses the technique, I'm guessing he has pretty much all of their locations and abilities memorized because he pulls it out so effortlessly. But even still, like, one mistake, you try to summon a car and you summon like a knife instead, and boom, you've lost. Like, you're legit. You are in danger. I am the danger. No, you are not the danger. You are in the danger. And thusly, I think that sort of leaves Reggie in a super duper rough spot. And another thing is just like the general destructive power of this isn't that good. Like, I'd say someone like Yuji would actually have a way better matchup. And I'm not talking about Liberated Yuji. Of course, Liberated Yuji would absolutely dog walk Reggie. But even like just Demon God, fully healed Yuji would probably annihilate this. Because as long as you have enough physical stats, you can pretty much ignore everything Reggie throws at you. And once again, oop, oh no, that's concerning. That was very concerning. But as long as you can pretty much ignore whatever Reggie throws at you through raw strength and stuff like that, like, I guess you've won. I guess there's nothing Reggie can really do about that. You just knock away the cars, you punch away the cars, or you just dodge. Like, legitimately, you can just dodge. If your stats are good enough and you aren't like fatigued or like nearly detonated upon like Megami was, you can kind of just ignore a lot of what contractual recreation has to offer. Ironically enough, the best part of the ability is the fact that they can like replicate effects. Like, the fact that he could use like a spa day ticket and like be fully healed, like he spent 2 days at a spa, is really, really good. But that's about it. Like, that's pseudo RCT, I guess. That's the upper limit of the technique. That's all you're realistically getting. And that's just not enough. Like, once again, when you're competing with the other abilities on this list, it's not enough. Contractual recreation is fantastic. I'd say contractual recreation in our world would be even more crazy than it is in the JJK world. Because imagine you buy something expensive and you just automatically get a duplicate of it. That's crazy. Heck, you buy a house, or heck, anyone else's house. Like, the stipulation isn't that it has to be your receipt. It can just be a receipt you stole off of somebody, and boom, you're able to recreate whatever they purchased with that. You could go crazy with contractual recreation in our world, but specifically in a world that's so heavily based around combat, and in a world with a lot of like really, really active combatants. Most of the time, you wouldn't even be able to activate this technique, because you need to be able to pick the receipt off, make sure it's the right one, then activate it. Meanwhile, other characters on this list simply have hit you already before you could even draw the receipt out. And that slow, not necessarily slow, it's not really a slow activation time per se, but that lack of like clear instantaneous action is what really would do Reggie in most fights. He's lucky he ran into a fatigued Megami, or else he probably would have been dog walked by darn near any other Culling game contestant, except for Panda, because Panda's cheeks. But regardless, I think that's where contractual recreation falls short. Does it have its uses? Yes. Is it super duper niche? Yes. Is it really, really cool? Yes. But in comparison to a lot of the techniques you get later on in this list, like, it's just not really comparing in terms of whether it be raw power, whether it be speed, whether it be vitality, whether it be versatility, whether it be extra bonuses. Nothing at all. And even with things like Hollow Wicker Basket in Reggie's kit, like, presumably every other person on this list has that. So Reggie's not special. So Reggie's ability kit is just super, I wouldn't want to say underwhelming, because it's not like I really had any expectations for Reggie, but like, still not anything praiseworthy, not anything I'm losing my mind over, not anything I'm like clawing and itching at. Though admittedly, I think out of all the abilities on this list, if I did have to take one to transfer to the real world, it would be this one. Mainly because like the duplicating stuff would be really, really cool. It's literally everything is a buy one get one free deal. You order $100 worth of food. You grab the receipt, you now have another $100 worth of food for the low price of some cursed energy. So like, it's a good ability in that front. It's a good ability in that certain way, shape, or form. But in a verse that has a bunch of people who will not stand by and let you whip out a receipt and chant something. No. You really need a fast acting technique or some crazy stuff to go with it, or some crazy stats to go with it for your technique to really stand out. But unfortunately, Reggie just couldn't make the cut. Bro just did not have it in him. But speaking of someone who did in fact have it in him, but it's going to be, I know, shockingly low on this list, let's move on to number 3. Yeah, you saw it. You know I'm here to talk about Kashimo. And here's the thing, right? It feels weird putting Kashimo this low on the list, but you got to remember, one, we have not seen Bro CT. Like that is just an entire unknown to us as readers. We have no idea what his curse technique actually is. Do you have a guess? I have guesses, but I don't think any of them are valid. Like, I'm not sure what it's going to be. And thusly, without a CT, it's super duper hard to rate Kashimo, because what does he have outside of CT? He has good hands, hollow wicker basket, apparently, and lightning bolt. And that's super duper good. I'd say it's better. I'd say, and I know that sounds crazy, I was very close to putting Kashimo at the bottom because of the lack of the CT. But I do think the destructive capacity and the sure hit nature of the bolt, and how quickly the bolt seems to be able to be built up and built up on multiple things, not just people, the bolt's diversity is still way too good. Especially considering, once again, this is a full ability overview. Just touching Kashimo due to the nature of his cursed energy is shocking. Like, it actually does some, not, I wouldn't say damage, but even just the slight numbness or the tingles that you get when you get touched by an electrical current. That, in a battle as intense with someone as intense as Kashimo, could be that 1 second of like, oh no, ow, that felt weird, and now boom, you're gone. Because you're getting hit with a lightning bolt. That is super duper crazy. That's the good thing. The fact that the lightning bolt is sure hit, Hashimo's got hollow wicker basket for domain defenses, and the fact that ultimately it's a really, really powerful attack. But where are the weaknesses? Why is this number 3 then if it's so good? 1, prerequisites for the true power of the technique to be shown, or the true power of his abilities to be shown. The fact that he needs to wombo combo you at all. The fact that he can't just call lightning or like call electricity straight from his body. He needs to build up that positive negative polarity charge on people. It's not that good. Once again, it's the conditional nature for the bolt to come out, because conditions can't always be met. I believe that any ability that has a prerequisite or some sort of like, I do this and then this happens, the more steps it is for you to get to your big bad ability, the worse your ability is going to be in my mind. And unfortunately, Kashimo suffers from that a lot. Like, look at this. Look at this whole interaction. First, Kashimo lands 1 hit on Panda. Goes in, 2nd hit on Panda. 3rd hit on Panda. Well, I mean, this may still be a continuation of the 2nd hit. So we'll say 2 hits on Panda. A block on Panda, or from Panda to Kashimo. Kashimo, another attack. Tears the arm off. So maybe that charge doesn't count, but still 4. Lunges in, hits Panda 1, 2, 3 times, maybe even 4 times here. So that's 8 already. Another hit back, make it 9. So 9 hits for the bolt to finally come out and do some real damage. And to be fair, Kashimo's definitely piecing up Panda, but still, the fact that you have to wait 8 or 9 hits before like your good attack comes online. What happens if you run into someone faster than you? Uh-oh. Guess you lose then, because they're going to be able to completely avoid you at close range or long range. Oh no. What if someone wears rubber gloves whenever they go to fight you? Or something like that. Like, legitimately, Kashimo, despite being one of, if not flat out, the coldest character introduced in the Culling games, his base technique just isn't all that viable. If Kashimo could fire bolts on command, if he could just think it and the bolts happened, he'd be higher. He'd be way higher. But that would probably quantify as a CT rather than just an extra little gift from a family member. So, like, that being the case, I don't know. It's just like, since the kit is so simple but so effective, it's like it's in that middle ground where it cannot go any higher, because the ones above it have more diversity. They have confirmed technique names. They have all that good stuff. And the one below it is just so booty meat that like Kashimo cannot go below Reggie. That may be my Kashimo bias speaking though, because I do think you would have a lot more uses for Reggie's powers in our world than you would for any of the powers of any of the other sorcerers. So I do think that this sort of lightning ability, while super duper solid, the 9-hit prerequisite, plus the fact that the bolt, I mean, it can be reacted to, quote unquote, but it is a can't miss attack. That's the big thing. The big thing that really holds Kashimo back from getting higher is the lack of a clarified CT, and also the general, and I mean general, confusion about nigh on everything. Not everything when it comes to the rest of this man's abilities, because all we got is Hollow Wicker Basket and the Electrified Curse Energy, and then the Bolt. It's 3 things. That's as deep as Kashimo's kit goes. And while it's working, it's solid enough. That's mainly because Kashimo's stats are super duper good. You give like Inumaki or Panda or Momo stats and threw them out there, then like what do you really want? Even with the lightning ability, they have to get 9 hits on somebody before they can actually whip it out. So like, I don't know. I feel like the Bolt, once again, is just a little bit too underwhelming. It just doesn't have the right amount of sauce to it. And this one, unlike something, maybe I should put, it's too late now, I'm committing. But it doesn't have any defensive capability either. The only defensive skill in Kashimo's Learn set is legit Hollow Wicker Basket. Okay. That's all bro's got. So with Hollow Wicker Basket being the only thing that bro has in terms of defense, I think bro definitely needs some defense. But since he's an all offense-based character, I understand why he never expect anything in the defense. But still, that ultimately leads to his detriment in a list like this, where you can't just be all offense. You're going to need some defense. You're going to need some balancing. And speaking of defense and balancing, and honestly, super duper basic stuff, let's move on to number 3. Did I say number 3? I meant number 2. So, number 2, the big thing where Ryu is at number 2 is that he has a super duper solid, and I mean super duper uber duper solid, crazy solid kit. Like one of the most solid kits to ever kit solidly. Like that's how solid Granite Blast is. But big booty butt cheeks, the big issue with Ryu that holds him back from getting any higher on this list is the sheer simplicity of his technique. Granite Blast, while super duper good for what it does, a big old laser beam, that's all it is. So it's just a big laser beam he can fire on command. And while having something that he can just do on command, he wills it and it happens, is better than Kashimo's Bolt and is better than Reggie's Constructional Recreation because he can do it on the fly. It doesn't have any special properties to it. If Ryu can't land the Granite Blast, it's not going to do anything. If Ryu is not strong enough to burn through you completely, say you have RCT or just happen to be the Queen of Curses, you can just bulk his attacks. Doesn't really do anything. Like, the general issue that comes when dealing with Ryu is the fact that he's just super duper strong. That's it. You literally see that in the Yuta fight, where the main issue is that Ryu is just way more physically powerful than Yuta. And it leads to scenarios like this, where Ryu has big, massive energy blasts, but Yuta's able to react to them and avoid them. Admittedly, though, this is from very, very far away. And the thing is, even with that being a weakness, I still say Yuta is pretty heavily advantaged. Or no, Ryu is pretty heavily advantaged with this technique because he does have variations to it. Like this tracking Granite Blast here is really, really good. The massive wide scale one's really, really good. The up close and personal one that's straight on is also really, really good. There is diversity within Granite Blast, but it's not enough diversity. Once again, I keep mentioning this in terms of like balancing when it comes to abilities, but Granite Blast is really lacking defensively. Like, if you are caught off guard with Granite Blast, unfortunately, I don't think it's coming out quick enough, even if you will it on command. That lack of, like, instantaneous action is super duper dangerous when it comes to like trying to operate within the rules of Jujutsu Kaisen. You kind of need that immediate defensive option. And there are other curse techniques and kits that do have that defensive option. Looking at you, Sato Goga. And even realistically, like curse spirit manipulation, stuff like that, it has defensive options, but Ryu's defensive option is just an offensive option. That's not, it's not good. It feels weird saying it's not good enough. Like, I'm sorry, sir. You just don't qualify. You're not good enough. But it really is just not good enough. You do need something extra, something more fancy defensively that Ryu's Granite Blast and Cursed Energy Discharge does not provide, even though it provides literally everything else. Just a super hard-hitting blast is good. It literally is the lightning bolt with less steps. Like, notably, the lightning bolt does have a sure hit effect, which I'd say is better, and that kind of compensates for it having the step build up. But even with that being the case, even with the lightning bolt having that, the fact that it needs 8 or 9 hits to proc while Ryu has his immediately is really, really good. The fact that there are multiple variations of it that all kind of do the same thing, whether it be the tracking granite blast, the large granite blast, the small granite blast, they all do the same thing. They just attack and vaporize. That's really, really good. So, sweet and simple is not always a bad thing. It works out, but it holds Ryu back from being in that #1 slot. It also hurts that bro really only had one fight. Like, I don't count Sakuto versus Ryu as a fight. Bro got introduced and mollywopped within like the same 5 chapters. So unfortunately, he just doesn't have much showings for Granite Blast outside the basic one. And that kind of leaves his kit a little bit underwhelming in the long run. When you're discussing it, it's like, he can blast you, and he can blast you this way, and he can blast you that way, but that's about it. You don't really get much of anything else out of the main man, the main myth, Ryu Ishigori. So is it more solid than the bolt? Yes. Is it more powerful than the bolt? Maybe. Does it have the sure hit effect of the bolt? No. But it does have that instantaneous action. It does have that immediate spray off, and it does have those variations, all of which super duper good and easily earn this a spot at #2, even without domain. But wait a minute. If this is #2, who could be #1? Okay, you knew it was Earl, right? Like, you knew Sky Manipulation was gonna be it. Here's the thing, right? Sky Manipulation is super. It's cracked in like every way, shape, and form. Put it in better. Give Sky Manipulation to me, and I probably would have beat you. No lie, I probably would have beat you if you gave me Sky Manipulation. I would have gone buku crazy bonkers with that. And here's why: the reason Sky Manipulation is so stupid, so cracked, so next level, is because it gives you full autonomous control of literally everything, the whole battlefield. Legitimately, you can essentially dictate the battle to your own terms with Sky Manipulation. One thing that I talked about all these techniques lacking is really true defensive utility. If you're a Sky Manipulation user, just fly. Just legit. There are like 3 other characters in the verse who can fly. One of them is flying on a tool. Another one is flying on a curse. And the final one is actually just like freeform flying, like run away. If you see a limitless user coming towards you as a Sky Manipulation user, run away. But even still, the ability, the option to just be able to fly like an eagle, it's crazy. It's crazy. You can just do that. No problem at all. That is some next level stuff. The ability to just freely retreat. But that's not the end of the defensive utility. Another crazy thing about the defensive utility of Sky Manipulation is that you can literally just take other people's attacks and throw it back at them. Like when Earl grabs the sky and just launches that bad boy back right at Ryu, it gets crazy. It gets tragic to the point where Ryu kind of, sort of, just maybe needs to get just a little bit more active. And that's wild, the fact that Ryu's forced into a scenario like this. But another thing that's pretty wild, pretty bonkers, is the fact that it also kind of just comes with like really solid built-in defense. Like, notably, look at how Earl deals with this massive Granite Blast from Ryu. While Yuta dodges, Earl just pulls over space. So ultimately, the blast hit the space and not her. So if you're able to react in time with Sky Manipulation, even blasts of this size and this caliber can kind of just be ignored by a space shield. Like, you're telling me that isn't actually crazy? That isn't actually stupid on the defensive front? And also, if you do have beam-like attacks or projectile attacks, you could do something, I don't know, just a little bit neat, just a little bit smooth, just a little bit buttery, and you could straight up throw your opponent's attacks right back at them. You can't damage your opponent conventionally with your regular hits. All right, take their own attacks and just throw it right back. And notably, now this does work really, really well for projectiles. Earl also has a really, really, really solid defensive safety net against physical attackers too. Like, specifically, look at the interaction between her and Yuta. Yuta gets into close, tries to swing, and Earl manages to grab the space and bend Yuta's arm out of the way so it doesn't harm her. So in close quarters or long range, in long range you get a retaliation style attack, and I'm assuming you can probably do a retaliation style attack in close range too. But actually, no, you literally see it right here. Earl does go for a retaliation attack after bending Yuta's arm. So you literally get retaliation attacks at both close range and long range. You get crazy good defense. You get access to fully freeform flight. And notably, all this sounds super duper cracked and crazy, but realize we haven't even talked about the real main attraction that makes this thing super stupid. And that would be none other than Thin Icebreaker. Now, here's the thing, right? Thin Icebreaker on its own doesn't seem all too crazy. Like, oh, you just hit a guy in the stomach or wherever with your hands clasped like this. All right, that's cool. But it literally is like a Duraneg spatial attack. Like it's Nyan on some Limitless type beat where like it doesn't actually make sense. This thing is so good because like look at how much damage it does to Yuta. Like Yuta needs to use RCT after getting hit with Thin Icebreaker, despite literally being inarguably like top 3 bulkiest characters in the series. One Thin Icebreaker to that boy's back and he was begging for his life. Like that is crazy. But it makes sense because it literally breaks the surface like thin ice and shatters the opponent along with it. That can lead to explosive force like you see at the start here. Things get crazy. And note, sky manipulation, in my opinion, isn't even used to its fullest potential by Uro. Mainly because the wild things you can do when you can manipulate space with your bare hand is great. Like imagine you grab space and you wrap somebody up with it, and then when they go to escape, you Thin Icebreaker them. You can like the kind of combos you can get working with like Thin Icebreaker plus the rest of sky manipulation plus the freedom of flight, like it goes crazy. It is literally, dare I say, it's kind of in an entirely different league to the rest of the techniques here. Like I wouldn't even put like if this was like a tier list of techniques in the series, sky manipulation would be like a whole separate, like there would be an individual empty tier between sky manipulation and granite blast. That's how big the difference is because of how quality sky manipulation is. You get so much extra sauce out of sky manipulation. And realistically, it's the one you get to see the least. Like Yuta uses it, and obviously Uro uses it, but the main users of sky manipulation just aren't popping off like I would. And like that's the thing. It's the beauty of choice with sky manipulation. Because with sky manipulation, you don't actually have to engage in a battle, just leave. Like very few characters in the verse can fly. And even characters in the verse who can like leap super duper high, they aren't gonna chase you like into the atmosphere, which you can easily go with sky manipulation, or you can just vanish out of the way with sky manipulation. And once they enter your domain, say a character is just jumping to try and reach you, they're begging for a Thin Icebreaker to the chest, a Thin Icebreaker to the dome, a Thin Icebreaker to anywhere. You literally see Earl capitalize on an opportunity that gets presented to her like that. You just knocked into the air, knocked into her domain, immediately runs in, Thin Icebreakers. So you're literally you can always control the battle, whether it be literally by throwing your opponent's attacks back in their face or dragging them off course, and or just baiting them into doing things. The freedom and flexibility of sky manipulation is like Nyan relative to like the Limitless tier in terms of you can just mess around and have a great old time. If your opponent's a projectile heavy fighter, Ryu, they kind of just destroy themselves bit by bit, piece by piece. They're just going to annihilate themselves one by one. And that is bonkers. That is bonkers. That's just an available option. If your opponent's a close range fighter, as long as you have the stats to react to them, just yank them out the way. They will do absolutely no damage to you. If you're about to get hit by a major projectile, but one that's so big you don't think you can spin it around and throw it back, just pull space over you so the attack overlays the space and doesn't damage you at all. Like, like this is so stupid, but in the best way possible. Sky manipulation is hands down like one of the best techniques in this. Like, I dare I say it's like a top 10, maybe not top 5, but like clearly like a top 10 technique with the flexibility. And we haven't seen a maximum, we haven't seen a domain, no, just the basic ability of sky manipulation from thin icebreaker to sky folding to flight, free form flight, to all that. All of that is so good that sky manipulation easily has to be number 1. However, that's what I think. Please let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure the notifications bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. You support for as low as $1 a month. Getting like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also then become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Back of the Pencil, writing off.